All right, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Modern and Intuitive HMI SCADA Systems for the Efficient Workforce. My name is Tom Trappell, and I'll be your moderator. And today our featured speakers are John Krajewski, Vice President of Product Management at Aviva, Alex Coker, Automation Architect at Enterprise Automation, and Brian Martin, Technical Consultant at Aviva. Today's webinar will take roughly 45 minutes, followed by 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A. But before we get started, I'd like to mention a few housekeeping notes. This webinar is being recorded and we'll be providing the recording and slides after today's live event. You can expect an email with all the content we're presenting today following the conclusion of our webinar. If you have questions for our speakers, please feel free to submit them below through the Q&A option on the On24 digital event platform, and we will answer your questions as they arrive. Finally, I'd like to mention that all the windows on your screen right now are completely customizable. So please feel free to adjust the size and positioning to better fit your own personal experience. And with that, I'd like to hand it over first to John Krajewski to get started with our presentation today. But gentlemen, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much, Tom. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who took the time to either attend live or watch this recording afterwards here. My responsibility here at Aviva is I'm leading the product strategy for the operate portion of our portfolio. For those of you who may be less familiar with Aviva, the portfolio that we have here kind of follows three major pillars, where we kind of look at the design and build and engineer kind of experience, the operate portion of the experience we deliver to customers, and the optimize. My responsibility center in that operate area. And this is an area within our portfolio that has changed a lot over a number of years. You know, I started with this company, going on almost about 24 years ago when, my original offer letter was on Wonderwear letterhead. And I've seen a lot of brands come by. And today we're talking a lot about human-machine interface. And human-machine interface has been a cornerstone. If you look at the far left of this timeline of the things that we've been doing as we've been adding to our portfolio and growing through our portfolio, HMI was a cornerstone going all the way back to 1987 when we first introduced the first Windows-based human-machine interface into the market. At that point in time, we were partner number 13 of Microsoft, and we kind of helped get that charge started in the industry. And we've seen a lot of number of innovations that have come across. But even now, many, many years later, human-machine interface is still part of the core pillar of the things that we do. Now, you'll hear us more and more talking about concepts like Aviva Operations Control. And Aviva Operations Control is more of a mindset, if you will, change for us here, where we look at the broader portfolio and the things that we include in that portfolio to achieve those activities will help our customers in their normal day. And so I'm showing an illustration here of a day in the life of a particular use case. It's not every day. It's not the only things that we can cover, but this is meant to be illustrative. And when I describe a mindset for us, is that we take this step back and stop looking at this from individual products that are in our portfolio and start looking at a holistic experience. We start to break down those boundaries between the products, whether it be our human-machine interface products or our historian or analysis tools or collaboration tools or empowerment tools, and we start looking at them as a holistic experience. And that is the term that we refer to as Aviva Operations Control. It will drive a significant part of our thinking and investment as we go forward. But a significant message that I want you to walk away with here is that human-machine interface is still an absolute core component of what we're doing. It's a core component of the messaging around Aviva Operations Control. It's a core aspect of the day in the lives of our users. When you hear us talk about things like Aviva Operations Control, you'll hear us talk about three particular types of experiences or packages that we describe, where we call Edge, Supervisory, and Enterprise, which are illustrated at the bottom of the screen here. And when you look at a human-machine interface, it's right in the center of that Edge solution. It will connect into the things that sit north of it. So if you look in the top end of the things that connect, and we do believe that there are experiences that can be augmented through cloud additions and cloud integrations into our portfolio. But we recognize that for a lot of our customers, that they will start in some of the basics around human-machine interface. I think it is worthwhile at least a bit of a discussion. So what do we see as the difference between HMI and SCADA? A lot of times I see people talk about them interchangeably, like they're exactly the same. So for the purposes of our portfolio, when we look at human-machine interface, it is that layer that's typically the closest to the asset. it typically has a little bit smaller scope than SCADA, and it may be a bit narrow in terms of its expectations. Often we talk about the things being done in the HMI as being near term. I'm planning the work for today, executing the work for today, whereas SCADA tends to be a bit broader in scope, and we may have an entire site or maybe an entire enterprise that may be in scope of that SCADA solution, very distributed in nature, whereas the HMI tends to be localized and may be localized to a kind of a smaller architecture and footprint, although we're still seeing them getting pretty large in terms of capacity, like tags and windows and things like that. So the HMI is absolutely still very much a centerpiece of what we're doing with the Viva Operations Control. And while I can speak about that for hours, that's not really the role of this presentation. The presentation today is to talk a little bit about our human-machine interface offerings and some of the later innovations and some of the experiences that some of our partners have had as they've been building out these projects and supporting our customers over the years. And so with that introduction, I'm going to call forward Brian Martin to kind of start walking us through some of those innovations that we've been introducing more recently. Brian.
Thanks, John. So let's talk about some of these technical innovations that John had talked about. So let's start with our latest release of our InTouch core InTouch product is 2023. So for 30 years, we've been innovating this market. Some of the major themes in the 2023 release is one of the things that's happening across a lot of the Aviva portfolio is a modernized UI UX. So at Aviva, we have standards for the UI UX, and all of our products are moving to those standards. So all products have the same look and feel. So that's one of the major features of 2023. One of the other major features is a lot of web interfaces. So a native web interface as well as mobile user interfaces. So we really want to expand the scope of this traditional HMI to empower all these other connected or mobile workers to be able to get at the information that they need. Another really important part of 2023 is a flexible commercial model, allowing you to address the various changing needs from small, as John mentioned, small HMI, single node, connected to a piece of equipment out at the edge, up to a larger SCADA system that may consist of many different SCADA servers and tag servers and a lot of different clients. So that scalability piece and the flexibility of the commercial model to make that easier. So with InTouch, we want to be able to visualize, control, and optimize your operations. So when we look at the web piece, we have a secure native web and mobile client. So operators, a piece of that is a piece that operators can create their own ad hoc displays during runtime, and I'll show a demonstration of that in a little bit. We also want to be able to extend this information by using our native graphic technology, the industrial graphics, in a native HTML5 format and being able to bind to the data that's available from InTouch or the other components that are part of operation control. And importantly, we're also going to secure that communications. So we're going to use SSL, we're going to encrypt that communications. So we're going to allow you to use that information outside of your operations technology networks. So we've also, as John mentioned, expanded the size and the scalability. InTouch has been limited for a long time, and I've been around a little bit longer with the company than John, going on about 25 years. InTouch has been limited in the number of tags that could be created in the application. Basically, with the 2023 version, we're unlimited on the amount of tags you can have in an application. We've also added some other functionality to help expand that functionality through a technology called Web Widgets. It's a technology that we've built into the products that allows us to expand that functionality and also expand the connectivity that a user has with the InTouch application to be able to extend that using technologies like OPC UA or MQTT to get that data that's available from all the different sources that InTouch can pull it into to all the different sources they may need to distribute it with. So those powerful industrial graphics is really world-class process visualization. And this is something that we use across the entire portfolio at Aviva Operations Control. So build a graphic once and use it just about anywhere. So create these common tools and standards from those small HMI applications at the edge all the way up to the enterprise applications that are spanning your entire operation. So seamlessly use those across all the different projects. So John said 25 years or 20 plus years. I'm around 25 years. I mentioned 1987. So here we can kind of see InTouch has been around for a long time. And there's a 1987 version of InTouch. We don't want to ever leave a customer behind. So we've never left a customer behind in those 30 years. We never intend to leave a customer behind for the next 30 years. So you see some examples there of InTouch in 1987, and then some of the new graphic capability of an application running in InTouch Web in 2022, or running the InTouch 2023 product. This slide lies a little bit because that's not really the original InTouch demo application. This is actually the original InTouch demo application from 1989, I think it was, when this was created. What you're seeing there is that original application running in InTouch Web under 2023 with 0 changes made to it. All it had to do is be upgraded, and it's running in the latest browser, connecting to the data and operating just like it did back then. And that can, of course, be expanded upon as much as needed. So one of the other things that comes in when we talk about these industrial graphics is how can we use these across the enterprise? How can we use these and make these easier for users to use in the application? So one of the biggest changes we've done is we've allowed the capability of storing and utilizing these graphics in the cloud. So just to give you an example of that, we'll go ahead and take a look at a quick demonstration here. And here I can see I've missed, looks like it's a couple things weren't cut off there. Let's start right here. So we'll get past this. I'll talk a little bit about this stuff later. But the next part of this video, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log on to the cloud. So this is a user connecting to the cloud. Once I connect to the cloud, I've got these graphics that are in the cloud. I'm actually pulling these graphics down. I'm dropping them directly into Window Maker. So somebody else had developed these, stored these on the cloud. I'm dropping them into frame windows within Window Maker. And I'm going to drag these in and drop these down. Sometimes I like to change my interface around, so I like a dark theme. So one of the new features of the UI is a dark theme. I like to move some of the configuration around, so I'm just going to move some scripts around over there. The other thing that we've added in here too, just to show it, is the ability to have user-defined types or assets. So here I have a new user-defined type or an asset called Tank1. I just created it. It's going to be important in the next part. As I switch to a web browser and I go ahead and log on to my InTouch web client, here's the application that I just created. It's up and running in a browser in a matter of minutes. I can go off and switch to full screen here. So now I see it running in full screen. And if I back up to the main part of the application, there's that tank that you just saw me create. Actually, if I zoom out a little, I'll see the tank that was just created. So that asset user-defined type is using the graphic that was associated with it and dropping it on this web widget into the application. Here you can see that the user is logged on. I can also change the language on the fly. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to Japanese, not that I speak Japanese, but I'll change this to Japanese, and you see all the text changing. No modifications required of design time. So I can go ahead and exit full screen there and go back and change it back to English, and I'm back in a different language, back in my native language there within the application. So one of the next things I want to talk a little bit about is InTouch as an OPC UA server. So InTouch for many years has been able to talk to a lot of different data sources. So those data sources range from the RTUs to the PLCs to older PLCs and serial connections. InTouch now allows that information to be shared with any other applications via standards, such as things like OPC UA. So InTouch becomes an OPC UA server. So it provides this open connectivity, supports browsing and subscribing to all of the runtime data that's available, all the data types that are available with InTouch. And of course, you can see the little padlocks there. All those connections are secured as well for the authentication. So I can create my InTouch application by using graphics in the cloud, which I just went through. I can also take that application and extend that InTouch application to provide that data all over the place. Now, if I want other users to be able to get at that information, I can utilize the personal workspaces. Personal workspaces allow me to use the InTouch web component and create an ad hoc dashboard at runtime with responsive layouts. No development tools required. There is one little caveat. This is part of our Flex licensing. So it requires the Flex licensing to enable the personal workspaces. But let's just take a quick example and take a quick look at what a personal workspace is. So here I'm going to go back to the same application, the same demo application I'll talk a little bit about later. I'm actually running this in a browser. So this is full screen running in a browser. I'm going to go ahead and switch it out of full screen mode here. So I'll close the full screen mode. And now I have a little button over here for my workspaces. So you can see I have workspace 1 and workspace 2. If I drill into workspace 1, these are graphics that are created, part of the industrial graphics, pulled down from the cloud application, stored in the cloud drive. And I've got these 2 workspaces. So I can switch between these workspaces, and I've created these myself. So these graphics were available as part of the graphics that some developer had created in the industrial graphics. And I simply drag the graphic over and link it to the tag names that I want to utilize in my application. So I simply grab these graphics, drag them over, drop them in there, and I've now created my own personal web space. So we've talked a little bit about InTouch, talked a little about the web client. I want to talk a little bit about the web client and InTouch as they all fit together. So taking that InTouch application, being able to securely use it beyond your OT firewall, that same exact window viewer experience, we saw some of the localization and language switching that we saw earlier, and the fact that it is completely backwards compatible with previous versions of InTouch. So let's go ahead and look. I'm going to take a look. I'm going to use this introductory demo. This is a nice feature that's part of 2023. When you install the product, this application installs along with the product. And as you can see, there's a navigation built in that makes it very easy to navigate. One of the nice things about the navigation is it works very well on just about any device. So even if I'm running this on a mobile device or a tablet, it's very easy for me to navigate through my application because I'm just going into sections and then drilling into windows within those sections. So I'm going to fire up a browser here, and I'm simply going to point this browser to my InTouch web client. When I point this browser to my InTouch web client, it fires up my web client, and it goes to the default application that I have published, the same application that I'm running in Window Viewer. So as you can see, it looks exactly like Window Viewer. It still has all the same navigation built in. I can still flip through all of the different features, all the different windows that are part of my application, and interact with this application the same way I would interact with it within my standard InTouch app, my standard thick client application. So as I navigate through this, you can see those different capability, and all of the graphic capability that's been available with the industrial graphics is now available and connects to the data within this application. So I'm going ahead and switching between my different dashboards here. You can see all the functionality of those dashboards. And now what I'm going to do is switch over into my application. I'm going to change the size of my browser just to show you that this is the same machine that's running my InTouch window viewer, and it's the same application that's running in Window Viewer. So some of the other things that are new to this is, sorry, not new, but I have the ability to drill into any of the basic graphics that have been published or part of the application as well. So I can drill in and take a look at my process demo graphics. I can take a look at the tank farm. This tank farm is a graphic that's available within the running InTouch application, but if users simply want to navigate directly to graphics and they don't need the ability to work through the entire InTouch application, they can go ahead and do that. Some of the other features, capabilities are there. We do have secure read-write capabilities as part of the application now as well. So here's an example. I have an alarm in InTouch. I can go ahead from the web client and I can go ahead and acknowledge that alarm. So I'll get the write back. We're keeping track of everything that happened, when the alarm happened, when it was acknowledged, who acknowledged all that, who acknowledged the alarm. All of that information is available and logged within the InTouch system for that application. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what you can do with the InTouch web client, as well as some of the changes in InTouch and that nice new demo application that if you install it, it'll take you through all the features of InTouch so you can see how all those things work. So once you've installed InTouch and you've created an application or used the demo application, you're then able to use the InTouch mobile app. So the InTouch mobile app allows you to use a mobile device to interact with the InTouch web. The application can be downloaded from the stores, so your app stores, search for Aviva, you can find the application and download it. Very simple interface, not much to it at all. Once you download it, it's a simple login. And then the connection interface that you see here, I type in the name of my server. Now, of course, my mobile device has to be on the network that has access to that InTouch web server in order to be able to connect to it. I also have to have credentials using my Active Directory credentials to go ahead and log into that. And I also have to have been given access to that application. So once I do that, it fires up my InTouch web application within my InTouch mobile app, mobile client app, and then I can see the application. Again, if you notice the navigation, it makes it easy to switch through simply by clicking on the different buttons within the application. I can drill into different graphics. You see an example here of looking at a bottling line. A little bit difficult for me to see anything with that bottling line. If I navigate off to something else, here I'm interested in what's going on with the drives. I can see that I've built into my application, I have the ability to go ahead and just click on the drives and bring that up. That graphic comes into full screen, and then I can close it back out and it goes back to the full dashboard. So the application is fully configurable, and it makes it very easy for you to create an application that has a great mobile experience. One of the other things that I mentioned earlier is the new InTouch web widgets. So a web widget really expands the scope of the HMI as well, adding a lot of productivity for a developer and functionality to an operator. So just to go through some of the examples of a web widget, this is a technology that enables us to drop in basically small web applications within the InTouch runtime window viewer environment, but those same applications execute within our web environment because they are HTML5 applications that execute within our web environment as well. So you can see them in InTouch Web and within the mobile applications. So starting on the left, we've already seen the map web widget a couple of times. So it's ideal for distributed SCADA applications. It supports all of the industrial graphics, just like you saw in the earlier example. They simply need a latitude and longitude and whatever industrial graphic you want to represent it, and it shows up on the map. It allows the developer to configure the map to say at certain zoom levels, show certain different graphics. It supports different map sources such as Bing, ArcGIS, OpenStreets, different formats to allow you to select and get that data into the web widget. So as we move into the operations control environment that John had mentioned, we have additional SaaS functionality, software as a service functionality that's available from the cloud. One of those things is teamwork. One of those applications is teamwork. It's an operator knowledge and skills development and digitalized tribal knowledge, and allows communication across staffs and shifts. Well, wouldn't it be great to embed that directly into your HMI? It certainly would. So we have a teamwork widget where you can embed that functionality directly within the HMI and use the context of the HMI to help the user interact with the different pieces of equipment that they're working with. Speaking of working with different equipment, one of the other web widgets we have is a QR code reader. QR code reader uses the camera on a mobile device that allows you to scan something. That scan could then be used to navigate the application directly to a piece of equipment. So a mobile operator walks up to a piece of equipment and scans it, and their application simply navigates directly to that piece of equipment. There's also a carousel widget. The carousel widget is kind of a plant floor digital signage. It allows you to select which industrial graphics within your application you want it to just cycle through. For a large screen TV and in a manufacturing plant that just navigates through different graphics as people walk by. We also have we have a web browser that allows you to embed web browser content within the web browser when you're running InTouch within the InTouch web environment. So when we look at InTouch Unlimited and what's all part of Unlimited, is Unlimited being a new offering with 2023, we've got all the basic stuff that's required for InTouch. We've got all the basic stuff that's required for an InTouch, for an HMI SCADA application. We've got the scripting and the business logic with the application scripting and window scripting, data changes, symbol scripting and action logic, user management. All of that functionality is at the core of an HMI SCADA application as part of InTouch Limited. As we start to go down and connect to things, we've got the connectivity to all of the standards, the OPC UA, the MQTT, SQL databases, APIs, a large selection of programmable logic controllers or remote terminal units, distributed control systems, Internet of Things systems, all of that connectivity available. So you can create global tags that utilize that. You can create the user-defined types or assets that I mentioned earlier in the presentation to connect to those different devices using those open standards. We also have the ability to alarm and historize anything, as we have anytime in the past. So once we've done all that, then we need to do some visualization. So we have visualization and client services that are part of InTouch Limited. We've got a desktop client, your standard window viewer client that people are used to. Now we have the web server, which the web server extends that capability to workspaces, allowing somebody to create that ad hoc workspace. We've got that language functionality to change that. And of course, we've got the alarming and history providers in report server to be able to get that information out for alarms and history. And then we've extended that visualization using those web widgets that I talked about earlier. And of course, all of those things just simply get accessed by web clients, thick clients, mobile clients. And then if you want to extend that data, as I mentioned earlier, to other OPC or other applications, you can do that via the OPC UA client. If you want to extend that data to Aviva Connect and make it available through the cloud, our cloud services within Aviva Connect and Insight, you can do that as well. And then sending it to MQTT brokers as well. So one of the things that an HMI SCADA system most likely needs in a lot of the application is a historian. InTouch Unlimited Premier comes with a fully functional historian, InTouch Unlimited Premier or above, including Operations and Control Edge Edition that John talked about earlier. This simply allows you to log all process information automatically, all alarms and events logged automatically. And of course, InTouch still has the data logger that's built in, so you can still use that. You get all the advantages of a historian with the 40 times compression, 2% of the data storage, 150,000 tags a second, up to 2 million plus tags being stored in the historian. So, and different ways of visualizing that data. So this isn't a historian session. We'll have another historian session that goes into all the details about the historian at some point. But just to show you, you've got all the process values, summary values, alarms, events, and you can retrieve that data in just about any manner that you want once that data is stored in there to be able to go ahead and analyze it. We provide a set of tools in order to do that as well. So there's a trend tool that works against our historian, a query tool. There's a web interface, which requires nothing on the client. And then we've got the Excel add-in that you can use there as well. Another thing that's available as part of that Operations and Control Edge Edition and the InTouch Unlimited Premier and above is the Aviva Reports for Operations. Aviva Reports for Operations is a reporting package that works against the historian and other data sources. Again, I'm not going to go into all the details on this. We'll have another session at this at some point, but it is part of that package. So I get all of that functionality in here as well. Very simple configuration. If you're familiar with using InTouch, if we go ahead and we go into a window maker, here's the new interface. You saw it a couple times earlier. I'm not in dark mode, which was strange. I'm surprised I didn't do that. But I'm going to go to what's called the backstage, and I'm going to go into the configure. Here's where I do the configuration for window maker, window viewer, distributed name manager. I'm just going to go into historical logging. Here's the enable historical logging that's been in InTouch forever. I can go ahead and enable that. It's going to store those proprietary log files. But now I can go in and say I want historian logging. When I select historian logging, I simply type in the name of my historian. And then over here, I can have my store and forward directory. If I'm on a work group or a domain, I can select that. I can determine whether I want to log all my alarms and events and what group I want to start logging those events at. If I have multiple InTouch applications with the same tag names, I can put a prefix. I've got all the configuration options to optimize it, and I go ahead and hit save. When I switch this application to runtime and window viewer starts, it's going to automatically go out and configure the historian, and it's going to automatically start logging all of those tags and the data from those tags in that historian in the context of that context of those tag names. So John mentioned this earlier. I've mentioned it a couple times. We've got a few different commercial offerings of InTouch, all the way from the small perpetual to a larger perpetual offering, all the way up to this Operations Control Edge Edition. This Operations Control Edge Edition basically gives me unlimited InTouch Edge, so I can have unlimited clients, tags, and servers. I've got unlimited communication drivers, unlimited historian functionality. I've got the reports for operations that I mentioned. I've got unlimited development. And based on the number of users for the Operations Control Edge Edition, I've got the cloud applications, the software as a service applications, such as the Aviva Teamwork, which I mentioned earlier, the Aviva Insight, which I mentioned earlier. And then I have our Aviva development environment as well in the cloud. So a lot of functionality added into InTouch in the latest version. So I've talked a lot about the basics and the commercial aspects of this. So now we want to hear from the real world. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex, and Alex is going to tell us how in the real world they've implemented these applications using InTouch and the other tools that are available.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, so my name is Alex Coker. I'm with Enterprise Automation. EA is automation consulting as well as a complete end-to-end systems integration firm, and we're located in Irvine, California. So today I just want to walk you through actually like a systems integrator perspective on InTouch modernization and how we approach this with our own clients. Some of the misconceptions that we see about the process, and then finally how you can actually successfully leverage your existing investment in the product. I want to start first with just a quick outline of some of the themes I'd like to get across. And it's really that in the end, not upgrading really may actually cost you, as the latest versions of software are really designed to address performance degradation issues and cybersecurity concerns, as well as, Aviva strategically invests and develops a lot of new capabilities, really what Brian just talked about and introduced, into their products to meet ever-changing business demands and really what the market is looking for. So through upgrading, you can preserve all of those prior engineering efforts, but allow you then to take advantage of those new features right on top of it. And those features then can ultimately drive increased business value for your SCADA system, as well as further your digital transformation journey. Let me start with a bit of a common scenario that, again, as a system integrator, we see all the time, especially with new clients that we engage with. So here's a common scenario. We'll come into a client, see an InTouch system installed 10, maybe even 20 years ago. Here's that same picture that was shown before. Typically, it's something that's probably not maintained over time. There's some probably bad stability concerns going on there. Dated graphics, not using the latest and greatest out there, so may also be some usability issues, some workflow issues that have developed over time as things have not kept pace. And really, that client has already decided we're replacing InTouch. There's no other option. Well, kind of the misconception here that we help our clients work through is, complete replacement is the only option. That's not actually really the case. The reality here is that through the tools provided by Aviva, you don't have to start from scratch. And that's incredibly important that they provide that option, because it means you can leverage your existing design, engineering, development hours already put into the system. And you can do that through just being able to easily import your existing graphics and windows into a newer, up-to-date InTouch platform. I've got kind of that first picture up there as an example. Again, as Brian had showed, taking your existing graphics, everything that's already been programmed, but pull that into a newer InTouch wrapper on a modern version of the software. And by doing that, then there's also no need to actually redevelop PLC code, adjust tagging with the system to make it work, because it's really just the same screens in the end. And ultimately then that this results in a much lower upfront capital expense for our clients by modernizing instead of migrating. And by saving that upfront cost, it can then be refocused towards an actual holistic plan for improving the system, rather than choosing to switch to a different SCADA product where you may probably have to make some compromises to save some initial capital costs to actually make that to happen. And what really is that holistic plan? We view it as building a foundation towards digital transformation. So modernizing an InTouch application creates a foundation that you can then build new features on. You can kind of see, again, example there with the second picture, that same wrapper that's hosting your existing legacy Windows. You can now start building new graphics on top of that in a newer high performance style. And EA, again, as a system integrator, finds that really the number one driver of modernization projects that our clients come to us with is getting data into the hands of those who need it, which this can obviously drive, because that foundation then promotes leveraging the other products that Aviva provides in their software portfolio to make that happen. I do want to kind of do a bit of a sidebar here on EA's own mindset when it comes to how do you actually choose a SCADA product. We truly do believe that anything can be made to work. However, obviously, pros and cons of different products out there in the market really vary widely based on each client's need and objectives. And we see through our own project metrics and history that when you kind of combine all the services, hardware, software, through that, it really varies less than 5% between the different options out there. So instead, we really try to help our clients focus on the value that the platform provides, not the cost. We're not just going to try and push towards the cheapest thing. We're going to push towards what actually provides the most business value. And what does that mean? Well, does the product actually provide all the features that you need to achieve for your vision of what you need the system to achieve? Will it then empower your operations to actually make better decisions? Will it maximize its value as a business asset? That's, you can think about that as like, what is the actual value that the data that the system is producing have for your business? And then finally, will it successfully put you on a path towards digital transformation? So I've explained why it makes sense to leverage what you have. So what do you actually get? Well, you obviously get the latest and greatest up-to-date supported version of the software. You are hopefully then also following latest best practices for cybersecurity because you're running new hardware, new operating system most likely, as well as the newest version of the software that incorporates a lot of cybersecurity best practices, really important nowadays. But then you get all the cool new things and cool new features as well that come with it. Again, Brian talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to talk about this in detail, but I just want to highlight a couple of these new features that we see as important to our clients, or our clients really kind of latch onto. So one, the enhanced user interface, more important from a system integrator perspective, really eases the workflow of working with InTouch and make things quicker, more efficient, cost savings we can pass on to our clients. You obviously have industrial graphics, really kind of the premier graphics development package, originally coming from the app server system platform world, now kind of the unified graphics package across all of Aviva's products. So one interface for development with a lot of features. You have tagging enhancements in the latest version, obviously the unlimited size limit now, but also in terms of just available features for tag lengths, description lengths, how you can organize those tags. You have the native historian integration that Brian just talked about, really important to kind of go beyond just simple data logger, but actually have a repository for your data that's, you can do a lot of things with now. You have the InTouch web client. You can see that example picture there shows that same graphic running actually in a web browser. The web widgets, especially the map application, is actually really kind of important one that our clients have liked, especially since a lot of our clients are in the water, wastewater, and municipal space, often with a lot of distributed assets, such as pump stations, tank sites, that sort of thing. And so for them to be able to put all those geographically distributed assets on a map with some KPIs really helps them to visualize their system as a whole. And finally, the OPC-UA MQTT connectivity, a little bit more, forward-looking technology-wise, but as other products out there in the market, Aviva's own, other ones as well, being able to get that data shared across to as many IT business-level applications as possible, really kind of again helps expand the value of the data that the system is producing. How easy is it to upgrade? Really easy. You probably are going to be starting with some new hardware with the latest operating system, especially if what you have is 10 plus years old. You'll go ahead and install the latest version of InTouch. Upgrading the application is usually as easy as just grabbing your application folder, importing it into the new version, let it run through the migration process. You obviously want to verify it works. Obviously can't promise that it's perfect, but for the most part, Viva has done a great job in ensuring that that migration and upgrade process is as seamless as possible. And then finally, typically the way that we like to deploy this, just to make it as smooth as possible, again, easy to do if you're going to be using new hardware for this system, is to set it up in parallel with the old system so that you can actually see it side by side, verify that it's working. Maybe you want to let it kind of burn in for a day, a week, a month, whatever you need to feel comfortable with it. And then you have a really easy cutover of just turning off the old system. I want to conclude with one final topic, kind of, again, regarding digital transformation. So along with modernizing InTouch, Aviva is also modernizing the way that licensing works through their Flex subscription program. So gone are the worries of having enough licenses or maybe even too many licenses. Gone also is the pain of upgrading part numbers through software revisions. Again, kind of really important for what we're just talking about here, modernizing InTouch. And instead, you actually have a easy annual subscription model that scales exactly to what you need. But once you do that, once you migrate to a Flex subscription, then it really becomes possible then to evaluate what is actually possible, what else that Aviva offers. You can start to explore other things in their software portfolio. And then where you actually find value in a new product, then it becomes incredibly easy to expand to take advantage of that. So some quick examples here of other Aviva products that you can potentially find value in. Again, really that concept of increasing the value of the SCADA system as a business asset. And the other thing about these two is they're also often quick wins, things that can be easily installed and configured alongside InTouch to, really expand. Maybe that's, getting easier access to the application, or bringing in other forms of knowledge, or really just getting that data published in a way that more people can easily access it. These are often quick things to set up. So you have the historian, getting that to an actual true process historian and not just a data logger. You have the reports for operations package then to easily be able to click together and publish reports with that data. You have Insight to make that data cloud accessible with some really user-centric, operator-centric dashboards. And then you also have Teamwork in there too for that knowledge transfer. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Tom.
All right, thank you, Alex. And thank you, John and Brian. Okay, folks, at this time, we're going to take questions from the audience. Once again, please feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A option on the On24 digital event platform, and we'll answer your questions as they arrive. If we're not able to get to everyone's question today, we will certainly follow up with responses afterward. All right, we did have a couple questions come in. Okay, our first question. Does InTouch Web require remote desktop services?
I can jump in on that because I think there's a bit of history behind that that helps people understand. Back in, I think it was 2012, we introduced a technology called InTouch Access Anywhere, which allowed you to take an InTouch application and host it into a web browser. However, it required the use of remote desktop services. In essence, what InTouch Access Anywhere did was it remoted a remote desktop through an HTML5 canvas and allowed you to access it via browser. Now, that worked fine, and it was a great implementation. It did have some downfalls, which is it required a server operating system, and it required you to obtain remote desktop licenses from Microsoft to be able to use it. We have invested in making our current InTouch Web completely HTML5 native. Now, there's a couple things to understand. Is InTouch Access Anywhere still there? Yeah, you can still use it. And so if you're using it and you're happy, you absolutely can continue to use it. If, however, you're looking for more of a lighter implementation that allows you to use native HTML5 on, say, let's say a desktop operating system, you may have an industrial computer and you want to be able to use that there. You can absolutely deploy the InTouch Web there. It doesn't require IIS or any of the other technologies as a built-in web server, and it'll work on a client operating system with native HTML5 clients. So there's been a lot of investment inside of that, and if you need more information about that, definitely take a deeper look. Next question, Tom.
Sorry, John, I was on mute. I asked, does InTouch support MQTT?
So MQTT, for those who may not be familiar with what that is, it stands for Message Queue Telemetry Transport. It's a mechanism for, it's a protocol that today is more published subscribed. The real value of MQTT in the marketplace is that most of the classic protocols that we work with are proprietary, which are pull response, which basically means that whenever you need data, you have to ask for it. Give me the value, give me the value, give me the value. So I may have to ask 10 times every minute or even faster, depending on how I set up my pull rate, regardless of whether or not the data has changed. With MQTT, you actually can set up a subscription where you can say, tell me when that data has changed. So if that data hasn't changed in that minute, your network utilization is 0. And so it really allows you to make better use of bandwidth. And the absolute answer is InTouch has ability to use MQTT in 2 manners. You can either ingest information into InTouch from an MQTT broker, so we can be a subscriber to an MQTT broker. We can also be a publisher to an MQTT broker. So if some other applications need to pull data from an MQTT broker, you can take data out of InTouch and publish it into MQTT. We are able to support the bare JSON format as well as Spark-Plug-B. For those of you who ask, what is Spark-Plug-B? MQTT is a very, very flexible messaging. Facebook uses it, Twitter uses it. You'll see that it uses in a lot of other technologies. And Spark-Plug-B kind of industrializes it and then puts a specific format that allows you to kind of be more industrial. We support both, whether you use the freeform JSON format or when you use the Spark-Plug format, either are capable.
Excellent. Thanks, John. We had another question come in. Could you go into more detail about what a web widget is?
Sure. That's it's an interesting thing here because when you go back into the history of HMIs, and not just the ones here from our company, but others, you've often wanted them to be extensible. So if you wanted to add, let's say, a grid, you didn't want to have to go and code a grid yourself. You were able to pull a grid off the shelf and dump it into your application, and then fill it with data from your application. Typically, the way we approach those were technologies like ActiveX. We also use .NET WinForms to be able to do those things. However, when you go to a pure web client, those technologies are not compliant. They don't work, right? So an ActiveX control is no longer supported by any of the major browsers. So we needed to come up with a way to be able to put content into our applications. And that content, we wanted it to be basically based on HTML5 and JavaScript. In essence, so that's really what the web widgets are, in essence, the equivalent of being able to put an ActiveX type piece of content into an application in a web compliant manner. Because as we were going to more native web, we needed to be able to provide some alternate tools to do that. So web widgets, in that case, you'll see that we'll have grids, we'll have maps, we'll have other things, but also you can build your own. And so they're all pure HTML5 and JavaScript in the back end.
Great, thank you, John. Is InTouch Web supported by all browsers? Are there specific browsers you need to use, or is it browser agnostic?
So InTouch Web is pure HTML5, and so it is supported by all browsers. There is one small caveat that I would note there is that we're finding that when you're looking to embed content, one of the web widgets that was described earlier was a web browser web widget, which is almost like Inception. It's a browser, it's a web inside of a web. You're putting a page inside of a page. We did put a piece of tech inside of the system to be able to deal with that better, because we're finding more web servers are refusing to be hosted into an iframe. And if all this is technology babble that makes no sense to you, don't worry about it too much. But some web applications refuse to be hosted. So what we did is we created a Chrome extension that actually allowed that to happen. So we got around it inside of that case there. And the details of that we can share in another session. But the bottom line here is that actually it's purely HTML5. However, we did put an extension that was Chrome based. And so anything that's Chrome or Chromium based will be able to use that extension there. So there are some added capabilities, but in terms of the bare, what it does in terms of our bare capabilities, that's pure HTML5 will work in any browser that HTML5 compliant.
Great, thanks, John. You know, for some managers who might be dealing with multiple locations, can you use a single application to support multiple sites?
Yes. So the one thing about, so when it comes to multiple sites, it really just comes, ultimately it's a technology question, really. So for example, we recently increased the number of tags that were supported in InTouch, and going back to a number of years, we had been limited to 60,000 tags. And so we recently opened that up, and we've supported applications over 300,000 tags now. So from a tag scalability volume, that's easy. Now we can be able to do that. We can, and ultimately at the end of the day, it really comes down to how you want to segregate maybe access to information, access to the applications. But can it support multiple sites? Without a doubt. The question really comes down to, very often we find that there are reasons why people would segment applications, maybe areas of ownership. So for example, if Department A wants to be able to take down their system to upgrade it, do they have to agree that a Department B is going to go down as well? And they may decide that that they want to have things that are independent so that they can manage them separately. It's really not, in that case, more of the technology is more than capable of it, but we find that very often the scale of the application are more due to political boundaries than technical boundaries, in my experience.
Great, thank you, John. We had an interesting question come in. Could you explain the difference between HMI versus OMI?
That's an excellent question. So operations management interface, when we started that notion, it really became out of some discussions we were having with customers where they started to identify that they had a need for different types of applications inside of their systems. Really, it really grew out of a discussion where we saw customers that had an increased amount of investment in other software. Let's say you have a software where you're going to be doing maintenance and you have work orders that you have to execute. Now, that software is a different piece of software. Do you recreate the work order stuff inside of the HMI, or do you embed it? OMI was designed to really tie together those other applications. Human-machine interface is kind of an evolution towards operations management interface. So today, OMI is more of a branded thing. Operations management interface. We have taken and built a technology that we couple on top of system platform that is called OMI. It does, I would say, it's a superset of the capabilities of HMI. It does all the process visualization. You can do alarms, you can do things like that. But it's very much a data-driven in its manner. So you can basically provide it a context, like an asset, and it can say what other application data is associated with that. It can find the graphics, it can find the alarms, it can find the trends, it can find the other external applications with the documents and things like that. And so OMI was a significant investment in a ground-up rewrite and process visualization technology. And little hint is you'll start to see more and more OMI technology bleed its way into InTouch as well, because that's something we're looking at.
So going forward, you could individuals could expect InTouch to support OMI graphics in all deployment types.
So the graphic that you build inside of any Aviva application is based on a technology we call industrial graphics. So let's say you built that bottling line diagram that was shown by Brian earlier. You can then take that graphic and you can put it into virtually any one of our applications. You can put it in InTouch, you can put it into OMI, heck, you can even put it into our Edge solutions and even our Plant SCADA solutions of ways of using that. You can take that information, you can also put it inside of Insight and use it up there. And so rather than having a number of diverse graphic formats, we decided that industrial graphics was going to be the graphic format. An industrial graphic can live in InTouch and it can live in OMI, and they're interchangeable. So somebody who's built content for OMI, you can use that same content in InTouch.
Excellent, thank you. John, we had some questions come in asking, could you explain some more about what is InTouch Unlimited?
Yeah, so InTouch Unlimited was sort of a recognition that the traditional ways that we had sold InTouch didn't make sense based upon some of the technologies that we had developed. So for example, For years gone by, InTouch had been developed on a model where you purchase a workstation with a limited number of tags, right? And so you come up here and you would buy it, you install it. It was a desktop client that ran on that machine, and then you would have a certain number of tags. As we invested in a number of technologies, whether it was the improvement in the tag name dictionary and seeing that it can go to an unlimited amount of tags, as well as that we had started to build more of a client server architectures where you could build a web server and then deploy there and have other systems connected to it, we didn't see as many thick client architectures. And so we recognized that we needed to offer a commercial model which made it easier to buy. So in the simplest of natures, it's a different commercial model. So with InTouch Unlimited, there are a variety of versions. There's InTouch Unlimited Standard, InTouch Unlimited Professional, and InTouch Unlimited Premier. They all have some things in common. They all have unlimited tags, and they all have unlimited web clients, meaning that, you know, if I want to fire up a browser from any device, I can connect to that system, and it doesn't require me to have additional licenses. I can continue to connect to that until I reach the resource limits of the hardware that I've deployed it upon. As you start to go between the different versions, there are some improvements. So for example, InTouch Professional includes remote desktop services clients as well, where that's not a part of InTouch Unlimited Standard. And when you go all the way up to InTouch Unlimited Premier, it puts in our world-class historian as part of that as well. And certainly, you know, there is more detail on our website around InTouch Unlimited if someone wants to take a look at it. But ultimately, it was a recognition that we had to change the way we sell the product to leverage the new technologies that we were introducing into the market.
Thanks, John. We had an individual that's currently using InTouch 2014. If they upgrade to the latest version, will their applications work in the InTouch web client?
So the easiest way of describing that is that there is probably, and being open about this, probably about 90% of your content will work just as is. So what's that 10% that might not work? Well, remember I was describing earlier about what is a web widget? There's certain technologies that don't come forward. So if you've taken an ActiveX, you download it off the internet, and then you put it into your InTouch application, will that work in a web browser? No, ActiveX doesn't work in a web browser. So that's an example of the type of thing that would not work. So an area you have to be somewhat careful of. But any of the process graphics that you've created, now the one is one prerequisite. If for those of you who have been around the InTouch world long enough, you may remember that there's a difference between what we call InTouch native graphics and industrial graphics. The InTouch native graphics have been around since that early or late 80s that we were describing. In 2007, we introduced a new vector-based graphic called industrial graphics. If you built your application prior to 2007, it'll still work, but you have to convert your native graphic to an industrial graphic. It's really just right-click on the window inside of InTouch and say convert to industrial graphic, and you can make it work. So it's not as if there's zero effort, but for the most part, we believe that 90+% of the application will work with no changes at all.
Great, thank you, John. We had another question come in here. And what application does InTouch use for the phone app alarm system?
So phone app alarm system, in this particular case, I want to be careful. So it was a mobile application that was described earlier called the Viva Mobile Operations. You can download that off of the Apple iTunes Store as well as the Google Play Store. Now that particular application is essence, it's a browser with the credentials pre-wrapped around it. And so it's not a specific net new application for alarm distribution, but you can use it in that regard. We do partner with people like Win911 in that space. We used to sell a product called SCADA Alarm, which was a competitor to Win911. We no longer sell SCADA Alarm as of this time, and Win911 has been one of our certified partners in this area. So if you need a specific alarm delivery solution, Win911 has been our partner in that space.
Great, thank you. Okay, folks, we're approaching the end of the hour, so we're just going to take one more question. If we did not get to your question today, we will certainly follow up with a response afterward. John, how do you recommend introducing InTouch to a plant manager who might be dedicated to using and maintaining their current legacy software?
I guess there's this part of that question I'm not 100% sure. I'm assuming that if you're saying that the legacy software is they've already got an InTouch application or something else.
Or maybe it's something alternative. My guess is it may be something alternative, you know, or maybe something that they had inherited when they came on board. If they're looking, if someone's looking to get
fair,
yeah.
The statement I would say here is that it wouldn't be around really focusing on InTouch. You'd be focusing what does the customer need? So why, like, what's wrong with the legacy? So a lot of times there's things that are somewhat obvious about legacy applications. They may be running on older and obsolete hardware that they're concerned that they wouldn't be able to replace. They may be running an older application that they may be concerned that, you know, they don't have the people around to maintain it, and those types of things. All of those things would be good reasons that you can move forward. But very often there may be changes of needs. I'll give an example. Earlier, there was a discussion that Brian had made around the carousel application. If you're buying InTouch Unlimited, then if you want to put TVs around the place that actually show maybe little displays around current progress, that's all part of the InTouch. You can just do that. And so, but ultimately, you really have to understand what the user is attempting to do. Are they trying to communicate more information? Are they trying to provide an improved situational awareness to their user base? I would start with identifying their need. And I'm quite comfortable that in most human machine interface applications of Plant4 solutions, because there are over, I think, 1.5 million applications of InTouch running out there, we've rarely run into incidents where they can't accomplish it. But I would focus on what the user needs.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, folks, we've reached the end of the hour. So if we were not able to get to your question today, we will certainly follow up with a response afterward. And if you have additional questions following today's event, please feel free to submit your questions through one of the follow-up emails sent out after today's live event. Once again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And John, Brian, Alex, thanks again for the great presentation.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everybody in the audience, and John and Alex as well.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Take care, everyone.